Institute has done a lot of research on this, a lot of objective investigating into where money goes for Catholic Campaign for Human Development, Catholic Charities in general, all of these organizations. And a big part of this is that, again, this is a giant bureaucracy, really. And a giant bureaucracy is very easy for people with, let's say, ulterior motives to get involved with and misuse. It's very easy to do that. And I think it's high time that, and again, this is difficult because what you will see it framed as, no matter what, is, oh, the government who is investigating this is being anti-Catholic. That's the way it's going to be phrased. And the alternative is that the church commits to reforming it themselves. But I don't think we're going to see that because, again, you're having to go up into this bureaucracy of charity work and charity workers, some of whom are clearly misusing this. And according to some of the investigations done, this goes into high levels. It's not just your local group doing this. It's an entire initiative. And again, we just covered recently, I think it was last week, because of the story going around about the Pentagon threatening Rome, we covered Christopher Hale and his efforts to stoke division and to portray the Catholic Church in a light that makes them look essentially as liberal as possible. And that's because that is who he is, and that is what he did work for under the Obama administration, was trying to promote revolution in Catholicism, revolution in the Catholic Church. And think of that kind of person multiplied by dozens, if not hundreds, and their dedication to making that sort of fundamental to any group like Catholic Charities. That is what you have seen a lot of. And even for a church hierarch who is interested in this, he's kind of going up against it. You're going up against a bureaucracy that, again, is united in portraying themselves as, again, well, this is charity. We're literally called Catholic Charities. What, are you against Catholic charity? As you said, the way that story was framed, you're against caring for children?
Exactly.
You're against, and you say, well, no, I'm against how you're doing it. I'm against how this is being done. I'm against the misuse of it. I'm against the not caring where these kids end up, because you're caring more about either the money coming in or just about looking good, about virtue signaling that you're caring for unaccompanied migrant children. But again,
nobody realizes the scope of the money that we're talking about. I think that maybe that kind of throws us off because most of the money isn't coming through parishes. Like, yes, some of the money is, but the majority of their money is coming from the government. Yeah. So they're basically an NGO, and so then you have to ask, well, who is their allegiance to? Is it to the government, or is it to the parishes? Are they Catholic in the sense that is the name of their donor class, or are they Catholic in how they actually act? I think that's a valid question at this point. And then you have, I think it was during the Biden administration that they received specifically earmarked for immigration-related things was like $4 billion. Yeah. Like, this is billion with a B. That's more than most of us can actually comprehend in terms of the amount of money. Like we think that we can, and then you start, figuring out how tall that money pile would actually be, and it's just unworldly, And so because of that, because of the scope of it, the amount of money, the degree of bureaucracy, the tie to government, which is larger than the ties to actual Catholics. The fact that in areas like San Francisco, they've been willing to basically do what the local government says, even when it's contrary to Catholic doctrine. Yeah. All of these things go together. I mean, if it were me, I would just shut down the entire organization, which is not to say that I don't believe in Catholic charity. Yeah. I would start new ones, because I think there's just, it's such a cesspit of immoral decision-making that I don't think that it makes sense logistically to even try and engage in a reform of it. Yeah, and we, as I was thinking earlier, we kind of have an example of this on a different level, but I think the principles stand, that our saint for today, St. Stephen Harding, he and his fellow fervent saintly monks were trying to reform that monastery that had grown very lax in its practice of the faith and practice of their monastic rule. And they tried very hard and couldn't get anywhere. And eventually they decided, okay, I guess we just have to go start another monastery. And one of the fruits of that is that those monks eventually repented and said, oh, please come help us fix our monastery as well, because we actually do want to restore our order. So for something that is
unessential to the faith in and of itself in this sense, as in the organization, not the principle of charity by any means, but this organization is not a doctrinal, pillar of the church. Catholic Charities as an organization does not have to exist because there are there are many other ways the church already does charity in other ways. So there is, I think, a good principle to follow here, that if it's really unfeasible to reform it, then just get rid of it and do something new and do something that is clearer and less bureaucratically corrupt, at the very least, to fulfill the church's mission of charity, and get away from this and abandon the framing that is so possible here of, okay, any attempt to fix it can just be portrayed as anti-Catholic, anti-charity. So I think we should absolutely. This would be a great prayer campaign, is to pray for,
and
if not well, that's the thing, is like if not a reform, because it seems so unfeasible, that we have new options put forth by the church specifically. This is a great place where bishops could lead the way. If you're a bishop who is concerned about these issues but feels like you're up against it, if you're trying to reform your local Catholic Charities or get your fellow bishops to do it or help you do it, if you feel like you're up against it that way, see if there's an alternative that you can start promoting that helps you have a backup thing to say, well, what's wrong with this alternative that I'm promoting? It's fully Catholic, it's fully official, it's fully in line with my diocese type of thing. See if there's a creative alternative you can do if you are a bishop who sees this as important, or if you're a priest who knows a bishop who would see this as important and want to kind of get that started. This would be a really amazing effort within the church. So, and for all you lay people, pray for this. See if there's maybe something you can do about that. Maybe there's some kind of alternative that you can take a greater lead in promoting in your diocese, in your parish, and kind of help this be a grassroots effort. There's a lot of ways we could deal with this, and most importantly, keep it in prayer.
Absolutely. And I want to remind you that you are listening to Rise Right on the Station of the Cross Catholic Media Network. Check us out at riseright.org. We have a YouTube stream, which apparently is having some trouble today. We're available on Rumble. We're available on the iCatholic mobile app, and we are available on the radio. The Station of the Cross, though, is a listener-funded Catholic media apostolate dedicated to proclaiming the fullness of truth with clarity and charity.
And coming up on that network today at 12 noon Eastern Time, check out Ask a Priest Live. Father Francisco Najo returns to join host Rudy Carlos and answer your questions about the Catholic faith. You can call in live and ask your question directly to Father. Check that out, Ask a Priest Live. Visit thestationofthecross.com/askapriest for more information.
And if you're buying or selling a home, there's an easy way to help the Station of the Cross at the same time. Real Estate for Life has 1,400 experienced, morally grounded agents in the United States and Canada. Visit realestateforlife.org to find a Christ-centered, experienced realtor near you. Don't forget to mention the Station of the Cross.
Yes, indeed. Rise Right. RiseRight.org is our website. Check us out. Sign up for our email list, and you can get a link to join our Telegram group. There's a great community growing in there. Now, Sarah, as you were kind of mentioning at the end of our news headline lineup, the story here from the DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, and the new secretary there, I would like to cover it because this is frustrating for anyone who was hoping that there would be some real concrete action continuing to be taken on the immigration crisis in America, because it is a crisis, and it's not just a crisis of mistreatment of migrants. It is a crisis of essentially what amounts to foreign invasion in many places. And this is something, again, the southern border got a lot of attention ever since, especially President Trump began his first campaign in 2015, 2016. And the southern border is essentially mostly shut down at this point. The Trump administration has done a pretty good job of shutting that down. The problem is that's not where the only problem lies. The problem lies in issues on the northern border as well. There's actually a lot of problems at the northern border. I see them because I live fairly close to the border myself here in New York State. And there's also issues with legal workers being imported, the H-1B issue. There's so many problems on the immigration front in America that are causing problems for actual American citizens current American citizens.
Any American who works in tech, you'll hear all about their fights against H-1B individuals and how they're placed in a sort of secondary tier compared to them, which is the opposite of what it should be.
Yeah, and so for the new Secretary of Homeland Security, Mark Wayne Mullen, to be going on Fox News and saying, oh, well, we want immigration, we want legal immigration, we're a nation of immigrants, those are direct quotes, and then saying that deporting illegals from the last administration is fiscally impossible. At this point, I don't understand how you can read that as anything other than a complete abandoning of the campaign promises made by this administration. So maybe you didn't vote for this administration because of other issues. Maybe you didn't really care about the immigration crisis. Maybe that's not on your radar for some reason. But it certainly objectively sounds like a betrayal of what the administration did promise to do and did promise to fix when they came in.
Yes, at the same time, I'll say, but we have been deporting. You know,
that's what's confusing, is that it seemed like action was being taken, and now I guess we're saying, well, we give up. That's what's really concerning about this.
Right, exactly. So to see somebody in this top level position basically announce this is really disturbing. But it is in contrast to what we've been saying. So this area has been one in which I think it's fair to say that President Trump has been fulfilling his campaign promise.
Or at least obviously striving to, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. So we have had the deportations, especially. We're literally still targeting those that have criminal records in addition to having defied immigration law. That's still the target. There are just so many people that are incorporated in that particular description, which is alarming by itself. The idea that you have people who ignore immigration law, ignore our borders, but also commit crimes when they get here or have committed serious crimes in their country of origin. So in multiple ways, they've demonstrated that they're a threat to the American people. Who are being principally targeted by the Trump administration, or have been, to see it being regarded as fiscally impossible to do this. You have to ask, well, what is the cost, of keeping illegal immigrants here? Because, we provide them with free attorneys, right? So they commit a crime here. Let's say they attack somebody. Well, we provide them, on a national level, we provide them with a defense attorney to engage in the defense of that charge. Yeah. And so you think that defenses like that are cheap? Because they're certainly not. Yeah. And we have all these different cases. I mean, we can't keep up. Like, for a while there in our lineup, we constantly had, these major efforts of deportation of people who had committed serious criminal acts. And there were just so many of them, though, that we can't keep them, covered on eyes, right? Every once in a while, we do cover them to let you know that it's still happening. Yeah. But it's just such a lineup. And then you have to ask, what is the cost, the human cost? Okay, no dollar amount. Just in terms of what happens if your brother or your sister or your parent or your daughter, gets murdered or gets assaulted by these people. What is the cost to you, to the entire family? I don't think you can quantify that. You obviously can't. And yet, you have somebody who's saying, well, it's not fiscally, responsible. And I'm going, well, A, it is fiscally possible and makes the most sense. And then B, there's something beyond, the fiscal response as well. There's the moral response. There's the moral cost of just allowing this to continue unabated when we realize what's actually happening.
Yeah, you have to think of it actually in terms of, in many ways, the Catholic justification for just war. And if you're someone who, especially if you're someone who understands Pope Leo's criticism of war and maybe takes his side directly against President Trump, you also have to understand that the Trump administration has an obligation to protect its citizens in a just way. That is the Catholic definition of just war. And part of that involves protecting American citizens against essentially invaders. That's what happens when someone comes over your border illegally. That's when someone goes into your house illegally without your invitation. That's a home invasion. Right. Definitionally, he is in your private home uninvited. That's an invasion. So that's the situation we're dealing with here. And not everyone who comes in illegally also commits other crimes, but they're already committing a crime there. And what you do see is that if you've committed one crime, you're probably going to have a tendency to commit others because it's clear that you don't regard that law as important. So you're probably not going to regard other laws as important. Again, it's not saying that every single person who comes across is also killing or assaulting American citizens, but there is already cost involved. You're taking that cost from American citizens, and the administration has a duty to its citizens to enforce those laws. That's what's going on here. And yes, you can absolutely say, well, it should be done in a humane way. It should not be done in a vindictive way. Yes, as Catholics, we should always encourage that. Again, just war. But especially if you're someone who says, okay, well, maybe we don't want the U.S. getting involved in these foreign entanglements and being an aggressor in these issues and doing something like that. If that's how you're thinking, you should also apply that thinking to how the Trump administration deals with immigration, and because that is the duty of a country, a nation, to protect those within its borders who are the actual subjects of the nation, who are the actual citizens of the nation. So this is, again, a very serious ongoing issue, and it's hopefully my hope is this is just some kind of either, it's hard to say it's misspeaking, it's hard to say it's just some rhetorical ploy that they're trying to deflect criticism at this time during this conflict with Pope Leo. I don't know, but it's quite disencouraging to hear this from the DHS secretary.
I'm hoping that he gets corrected behind the scenes and perhaps issues a different statement, because going forward, I don't see how it's sustainable to keep him in the position that he's in if he believes that, and if he believes the sort of rhetoric of we're a nation of immigrants as if settlers are simply immigrants. Yeah. Let's not engage in any of that. In any case, I want to remind you, you've been listening to Rise Right, hopefully throughout this week. Thank you for joining us. I'm Sarah Cain, joined by my co-host Jacob Martin Kraft. We're glad to have you every morning, every weekday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time. We will be back on Monday at the same time, and we will see you then.
Absolutely. With more news, more saints, all the things you want from Rise Right. Until then, have a wonderful weekend. God bless you.
Tired of your phone bill supporting who knows what?